work. It wouldn't be meaningful. I think we've already seen signs that it is working. The jury will still be out on whether or not 5 years from now all those businesses will be booming in the downtown area, but I think we've made a significant start. One of the things that we've started saying over the last 2 years is clean up. I remember well in 2003 when I was on the city council, there were lots of press here because the 4th Infantry Division was deploying to Iraq. It was going to be one of the lead elements, so we got a lot of press coming in here. And some of these newspaper articles referred to us as a scruffy little army town with pawn shops and fast food joints. And many of us were highly offended at first. And some of us started to think, what can we do to improve this image? Maybe we need to be more concerned about how we look. And at that time, I believe there were 2 code enforcement officers. And now there's 12 code enforcement officers. The regulations, the ordinances have been modified to be more demanding, and there's people there to enforce those ordinances. And I think you've seen a dramatic improvement in the way that we look in the city of Killeen since 2003. It hasn't happened just within the last 2 years. It's something that has happened gradually over time, and it's something that we need to continue to emphasize. We need to pay attention to how we look and what our image is to others. We need to pay particular attention to the points of entry into our city and how those corridors look. One of the things that we have done recently is to expand the airport. The project was $8.2 million. It just seems like just a few years ago that airport had its grand opening. I know it had its grand opening back when I was on the city council, I believe in 2005. Took that first jet ride out of that airport. What a beautiful facility that is. But now it's time to start expanding, and we put up 10% of those funds. But we had those funds available because the required passenger facility charges that are paid as part of every ticket are kept in a special fund that can only be used to enhance things like the holding areas for the passengers and those kind of things. So we use this available money established by the rates to help with that. But we got additional 1,400 square feet added to each one of the hold rooms there in the airport, and we put in some additional retail area, and the biggest part of that was to put in a totally different baggage handling area for security purposes. The hike and bike trail extension, as I said, previously was completed, and if you haven't walked from 38th Street over by Killeen High School to the downtown area on that trail, you can do it at night. It's well lit, it's safe, it's patrolled, but you need to take advantage of what a beautiful walk that is. One of the things that we've done fairly recently within the last year is to change how fuel is purchased in the city of Killeen. Before that, all the city vehicles would go to a central point on Bacon Ranch Road to get their fuel. So if a truck was out in the far southeast Killeen and was running low on fuel, they would drive all the way back to Bacon Ranch Road by the rodeo grounds in that particular area and fill up and then go back to their assigned duties. So what they were doing was wasting all that travel and additional fuel and time to go refuel. Well, we've gone with the Fuel Man program where they can pull into virtually any of the convenience stores or other participants and buy their fuel. During the period of time from November to February, we saved 1,772 gallons per week, 10.8% reduction in fuel use, saving the taxpayers $90,159. We expect that will continue to be a good savings. Not only is it saving the fuel cost, but it's also saving productivity and effort on behalf of those employees who would be passengers or drivers of a vehicle going to get refueled. But that's been a dramatic savings for the taxpayers. In the area of public safety, not quite 2 years ago, we received word that the ISO rating had been upgraded to ISO 2. What does that mean to you? Well, to you citizens who own houses and pay casualty insurance, like fire insurance on your house, it means you saved about 15% because everybody got rate reductions because of that higher ISO rating. Less than 1% of the cities in the United States have a fire rating that high. And that's because we have the right distribution, the right number of ground storage, the right number of elevated storage tanks, the right number of fire stations and firefighting capability, and the right number of firemen to get that done. We need to keep that ISO 2 rating. That's why it's important that we continue with fire station number 9. Some of the areas of Killeen we have to cover now through agreements with volunteer fire departments, and it would be best if we can get fire station number 9 put in place in the 2 to 3 year time frame. We've also seen a reduction in our crime rate. The violent crime index declined 11.41% between 2012 and 2013. The overall crime index decreased 5% between 2012 and 2013. So we continue to make efforts. One of the ways to get the crime rate down is what the council has been doing for quite a number of years, and that's continuing to hire additional police officers. And to convert some of the jobs that police officers were doing to non-professional police officers, so that they don't need a license to do some of the jobs in the police headquarters. And that's been helpful. We continue to plan for our future. One of the areas that is going to have to be wrestled with in the future is solid waste and recycling. What the current council has done is decided that we need a lot more information before we can make a good decision with regard to recycling. We need to have a solid waste master plan. Some current events that may change some of the thinking is whether or not there's going to be a recycle facility built locally in connection with Fort Hood, and how we might be able to have a partnership with them on that. But these are things that will all be taken into account in the solid waste master plan and a rate study. There are so many variables to consider, from the sizes of the containers. The first plan that the city came up with was just an alternative to look at for study, but it had 2 96-gallon containers, one for recycle, one for solid waste. And the reason that there will only be one container was a concern about the migration to lower volume containers and the effect that would have on the revenue collected. The solid waste fund is an enterprise fund that is operated as a business. The rates are set at a rate, in essence, to break even. So whatever expenditures you have to have a rate that will cover that. So we have a very, very few people use the small 32-gallon containers and the 64-gallon containers. Most all of the containers, I believe around 90%, are the 96-gallon containers. If there's a strong migration to those smaller containers, then we will not be raising enough revenue to be able to cover the expenses of solid waste, which means we'll have to raise all the rates. It's a situation that is complex. That's why we need someone to do a rate study. And also look at what happens. We will not be the first city to go to a single stream recycling system. And the experts that we question, we ask them, what kind of participation are you going to get if it's not mandatory? And they virtually said, it's so low that it's not worth doing. And a lot of people resist mandatory recycling. There's a notion that you can give people incentives that'll be so attractive to them that they'll want to do it. And any incentives you give to those people, you're charging other people in the system, because that solid waste fund has to get enough revenue to pay all of the expenses. And that's why the rate study people are going to look at that and give us some facts. When I say us, I'm using that kind of like in the sense of you all who are left on the council and the new mayor to grapple with that. But it's going to be a difficult decision where you're going to face a lot of opposition from the public, and you're going to have to do the right thing for the long-term interest of the city. Just like that council did that raised taxes 4 cents to build these roads that need to be built. Just like that council did that decided, yes, we need to put our money where our mouth is and build and revitalize the downtown area. It wasn't our council. Our council is the one that says, yes, we will build a water treatment plant. Yes, we will do reuse. And we'll see in the future whether or not that was a wise move or not. But we bit the bullet on that, just like the future council will have to bite the bullet on these things. Another study that we have underway is street maintenance, and I believe that study will be in fairly soon. And that is the situation that we have with our street maintenance, and we've had for many years. We've discussed this in 2003, 2004, 2005. Councils have been discussing it every year. We are not spending enough money annually to maintain our streets and do the preventive maintenance that it takes to keep our streets healthy, which means at some point we will have to rebuild streets, and that's really expensive. So what we need to do is to have a plan based upon the condition of our streets now, so that we know when to do what kind of maintenance over the years. And I think that that's going to run somewhere between $1.5 million and $1.7 million every year to have that done. It's kind of like the Fram man says, you can pay now or you can pay later. Yeah, you can not change your oil in your car and drive it a long time. Then you're going to have to replace the entire engine. That's not how we want to be stewards of the taxpayers' money with regard to our streets. So we're going to have to look at some ways to fund that. Certainly one of the ways to do that is to create a transportation fund similar to the drainage fund, where we tack on a fee. We could drop the $1 fee that we have on the water and sewer bills now and come up with another $1 or $2 to assess for a transportation fund that would help supplement the $700,000 or $800,000 a year that's currently budgeted in the general fund, and maybe increase the franchise fee that solid waste pays. Their big trucks rolling down the streets do a lot of damage, and it would be reasonable and logical to assess a higher franchise fee from that enterprise fund to help with the street maintenance. Many years ago, Ida Palm did the downtown plan, and we've also had a comprehensive plan that's resulted in a future land use map. We've continued to wrestle with that. Planning and Zoning Commission brought us a proposed change, which the council turned down. So I don't know what the future is with regard to land use. There needs to be some sort of plan that developers and landowners within the city and the extraterritorial jurisdiction can rely upon. We've been in several situations where our future land use map shows that it'll be suburban residential. Someone comes in with a suburban residential request for that area, and we turn it down. That doesn't build a lot of faith in our plan in the eyes of developers and landowners. But we're going to have to come up with a future land use map that the council, the Planning and Zoning Commission, the landowners, and the developers can buy into and have faith in. Know that when they come in with a request that's consistent with the future land use map that we have approved, that we will actually vote to approve their project. And if they come in with something that's not consistent, they better have a darn good argument on why it should be changed. Our future land use map does not say you can't change it. It says you have to have a darn good reason to change it. But we have not been consistent in the operation of that future land use map for years. We are in the process of revising the Parks Master Plan. It's amazing what kind of use the Lions Club Park gets. And we need to have other parks like that within the city. We need to have a park like that in the western part of the city. We need to have a park like that in the northern part of the city. And part of this 2014 bond program, this $20 million bond package, it's intended to dramatically improve the parks in those areas. There's an extension of the hike and bike trail that's going to go in the western part of town off Watercrest. And that'll be helpful to that as well. Back in 2005, a 5-year budget software was created to help the city look at long-term plans for the budget, and that's continuing to be used within the finance office. Another plan that we're looking at is the transportation plan. That series of roads and networks needs to be better developed. In the past, we put lines on maps without regard to terrain or where they're actually, where it would be reasonable to build a road. We've ended up in situations where it's just inordinately expensive to build a road through a particular area. We need to come up with a viable transportation plan where those roads are actually going to intersect would be likely areas for having commercial development, and where minor roads intersect might be places to have neighborhood business developments. But we need to look with some sort of reasonable way on coming up with an integration of the transportation plan and the land use map. Another plan that's going on, I think we just got the results in that the council will be briefed on shortly, is the employee compensation plan. We directed this be done some months ago because of concerns that our employees were not being taken care of in relation to how other cities are paying their people. It's a problem that used to be terrible within the fire department and the police department. Where we were training people, and they were, after a year or two, they would go get a job someplace else. That has not been the case for years. The turnover in the fire department and the police department are very minimal. And that's because they're being paid competitively. We are starting to be a little bit disparate, a little bit lower in those areas than we should be. So this pay plan will tell us what we need to adjust and how much. It's probably something we're going to have to bite off over 3 to 5 years, giving highest priority to those areas where we can't afford the leakage, where there's a high amount of training involved, like police and fire, and then accommodate the rest of that. We have a lot of essential relationships between the city. One of the key areas where we try to maintain a strong relationship was with Fort Hood and its leaders. I and other council members attend functions on Fort Hood frequently. In a typical week, I'll have 2 or 3 functions on Fort Hood. Some outdoors in the heat and cold, some inside. There are plenty of opportunities that we take advantage of to meet in social circles with Fort Hood leaders. That's why over the years I've come to know each of them on a first name, friendly basis, their spouses, and that's something that we need to continue to do to maintain excellent relationships with Fort Hood, so that when there is a tragic event like we had on April 2nd with the shooting, I get a phone call and I get informed exactly about what's going on. And they don't have to tell me not to tell the press. They know I won't do that. And that's the kind of trusting relationship that we need to have with the people on Fort Hood. And I'm proud of the relationship that we do have with Fort Hood and its leaders, and I think that we've had that good relationship with Fort Hood for many years. That's why they call this the great place, is because of the community support that they get. They talk about that, whether or not they're in Washington, D.C. and other places, about how the community, not just Killeen, Harker Heights, Gatesville, Lampasas, Belton, Temple, how the area cities and people support the soldiers. We've met several times with our federal elected officials. In March, on the 27th, we had an opportunity, the city manager and I and Mr. Crutchfield from Economic Development, Bill Perry from the Heart of Texas Defense Alliance, met with Congressman Carter, Congressman Williams, Senator Cornyn, and Senator Cruz. We had very good meetings. I'm not talking about just a 2 or 3 minute, how are you? I'm talking about sit-down meetings for 15 to 30 minutes with each of these people who are very receptive, attentive. I think we have established a good relationship with each of those. Senator Cruz has accepted our invitation to come here and visit. He spent over 2.5 hours here, which in his schedule is a lot. And we continue to maintain a good relationship with Senator Cornyn and have for many years, and their regional representatives. Roger Williams only has a small portion of our district, but he's here for everything at Fort Hood, and we've become close friends over the last 2 years. Our state elected officials do a terrific job for us. Representative Jimmy Don Aycock and Representative Ralph Sheffield. Ralph was the vice chair of the House Committee on Military and Veterans Affairs. Senator Frazier has been a friend to our city and has been there when we needed him, especially with regard to our lobbying for Texas A&M Central Texas. Our new representative, Molly White, is already establishing relationships with us. I arranged for her to attend briefings at Heart of Texas Defense Alliance, and she's really getting up to speed on the military, what's happening in this area, and I think she'll do a terrific job representing our area. With regard to the Texas defense communities, in January when I was in Washington, D.C. for the Conference of Mayors, I had some talks with Julian Castro, the mayor of San Antonio, and Mrs. Ramirez, the mayor of Corpus Christi and the incoming president of the Texas Municipal League. And we talked about what the state of Texas was doing or not doing with regard to helping keep the 238,000 defense jobs in Texas. We talked about what Florida, North Carolina, and other states were doing. And we thought maybe if all the defense community mayors got together, we might be able to come up with a plan to try to get the legislature to appropriate money to help in this worthy process of retaining jobs, military jobs in Texas. The state spends millions trying to attract jobs. Why not spend millions to keep jobs? It makes perfectly good sense. So in March, Killeen agreed to host the first meeting, and on March 17th, representatives, many mayors from across the defense communities in Texas met at the Civic and Conference Center from 10 to 3, and we had a very productive meeting. Mayor Castro is hosting another meeting on June 16th in San Antonio. We need to continue to be a part of that and do what we can to influence the legislature to appropriate money so that defense communities can apply for grants. Defense communities are unique in that we don't have the tax base that many communities have. Well, we have the tax base, but it's on federal land. So we can't tax our industry with ad valorem taxes. In recognition of that problem, the federal government gives $44 million a year to the Killeen Independent School District so that those kids can still have a quality education. But there's no impact aids for the cities around military bases. We have much the same problems. And what happens with the state government is that for very good reasons, they pass laws that provide great benefits to, for example, disabled veterans, where they don't pay property taxes. And that adversely affects our community to the point of over $1 million a year in lost revenue. And that, most people believe like I do, that is something that we certainly need to give as far as a benefit. But what you have to recognize is that everybody else in our community is going to have to pay more to pay the share that those disabled veterans are not paying. When we go to our airport and park,